My name is Jason and this is Just Watches. Okay, today we have two watches from MMI Watches, which is a brand based out of Singapore. I reached out to them because I was fascinated by the date complication they use on their watches, which they refer to as the rotodate, and I was really excited to be able to borrow them. Before we get to the review, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the content of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So for price and availability, both these watches are currently sold out, but MMI Watches let me know a version 3 will be coming out in the future, as well as a brand new pilot style watch that uses the same rotodate complication. After converting Singapore to US dollars, the MSRP on the chronograph was approximately $320, and the automatic was approximately $285 at the time of this recording. Now both these watches have the same case. It's 40 millimeters in diameter, 47.5 millimeters lug to lug, 13.5 millimeters thick, but on the automatic about 1 millimeter of that is this domed crystal, and that has a 22 millimeter lug width opening. The chronograph uses a sapphire crystal that is domed, so it's a bit thicker at about 14 millimeters. Now I absolutely love this case shape. It reminds me of the Seiko Samurai, which is a case I adore, but always felt it was a bit too big for my wrist. This case has similar angular lugs with really good finishing for the price point. Both the inner and outer edge of the lugs are high polished chambers. The center of the lugs and sides of the case are brushed. The crown guards share the same angular design, and the sides of the case even ever so slightly shroud the bezel of the watch. While the case back is a touch thick, the short lug to lug and inverted bracelet end links make sure this watch rests very comfortably on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. Size for my wrist, the automatic weighs in at 168 grams, and the chronograph weighs in at 154 grams. The bracelets are also the same. They start at 22 millimeters before tapering down to 20 millimeters. The solid end link has no play and also features a quick release system, which makes taking the bracelet on and off a snap. The articulation of the bracelet across the back of the watch and between the links is both excellent. Both of these factors are important for a comfortable bracelet. Now the links themselves are of an H-link style, which I've always found extremely comfortable. The links are fully brushed, and then the clasp is a double push to point with a safety catch and is signed with the MMI Watches logo. The fold over is fully milled, and there are 5 micro positions which will help you get a perfect fit. Finally, to size the bracelets, there are screw pins and very big screw pins. I actually much prefer these larger screws. When a watch uses very small screw pins, it's sometimes pretty easy to damage them if you're not careful. With these larger screw pins, they were just rock solid and I had no worries about damaging them while sizing the bracelet. I wish more brands would use this style of larger screw pin. Both watches use screw down case backs, which helps provide 300 meters of water resistance on the automatic and 100 meters of water resistance on the chronograph. Both case backs feature the MMI Watches logo engraved with a satin finish. Both watches are limited run and individually numbered. For movements, we have a NH35 in the automatic. This is a hacking, hand-winding 21,600 vibration per hour movement with a 42-hour power reserve and a stated accuracy of -20 to 40 seconds per day. However, I usually find they run closer to plus or minus 10 seconds a day on average. It also features this very cool rotodate complication, which you can quickset. On the chronograph, we have the Seiko Mecha Quartz VK67A. This movement has running seconds as well as a chronograph with a central seconds hand and a 60-minute and 12-hour sub-register. The battery life is 3 years and the stated accuracy is plus or minus 20 seconds per month. Both watches use a 7mm screw down crown, which is nicely knurled, signed, and very nicely loomed. The crown is large enough to easily operate the watch despite the crown guards, and the threading and unthreading action is very smooth. On the chronograph, we also have pushers for operating the chrono. While they appear to be screw down pushers, this is only cosmetic, which I actually prefer. I think screw down pushers on a chronograph are extremely inconvenient. The automatic uses a 3mm flat sapphire crystal that sits about 1 millimeter proud of the bezel. There's a nice facet all the way around the edge, and the crystal is treated with anti-reflective coating. The chronograph uses a double domed sapphire crystal that rises about 1.5 millimeters above the case of the watch and is also nicely treated with AR coating. I really like the look of the domed crystal, but either way, getting a sapphire crystal with AR coating at this price point is awesome. Both watches use 120 click unidirectional bezels. Now the bezel is partially shrouded by the case. This is part of the inspiration of the name turret, as it's based on the ironclad naval warship, the USS Monitor, which was a technological marvel in the 1800s and had a rotating turret. Now the bezels are a bit thin and can be a touch hard to get a grip on, but the action is satisfying, clicky, and consistent. The automatic uses a steel insert that is ion plating, which makes it look very similar to ceramic. The chronograph has an aluminum insert. Both have 5-minute designations and Arabic numerals, as well as minute markings for the first 20 minutes. I love when a chronograph also has a dive bezel. I know it's slightly superfluous, but I find I will use both. For dials, let's start with the automatic. At the very edge, we have a white ring with dashes for each of the minutes and then smaller subdividing dashes. The dial is blue and has a horizontal grain effect that catches light and is frankly quite mesmerizing. Moving in, we have the Rota date, which was one of the main draws to this watch. It reminds me of the Oris pointer date or the Oris Great Barrier Reef date complication. It's a really fun way to show the date, and I like how it doubles as a visual representation of how far into the month you are. Now moving in a touch further, you have the MMI watch's logo and then turret in orange to match the date indicator and the water resistance. The indices are applied and filled with lume and fit perfectly between the edge of the dial and the Rota date ring. A double index is used for 12 and 6, helping to orient the watch. The dial is a touch busy, but in a good way. Moving on to the chronograph, this one utilizes a chapter ring for the tachometer, with tachometer written in orange to match some of the other aspects of the watch. The dial is a nice light gray that is ever so slightly sparkly in the right light. There's a lower section for the Rota date complication. The dial then raises with orange marks for each of the hours alongside applied indices that are filled with lume. The indices are absent for positions with subregisters, of which there are 3. One at 12 for the chronograph minutes, one at 9 for the chronograph hours, and then one at 6 for the running seconds. Each subregister is also sunken into the center portion of the dial. The MMI watch's logo and chronograph round out the dial at the 3 o'clock position. The dial is also very busy, but in a pleasant way, and I love the combination of light gray and orange. The hour and minute hands on the automatic are flat syringe style hands and have a brushed finish. They are both of very well thought out length, with the minute hand reaching to the outer circle and the hour hand terminating at the Rota date circle. The second hand is also very long, with a simple counterbalance and a lume portion near the very end, just outside the Rota date circle. The hands on the chronograph are high polished baton style and gabled so they will catch light nicely. The chronograph hand is orange to match the other accents on the watch, as well as orange hands for the subregisters. The lume on both of these watches is fantastic. You can see it's not even all the way dark in this room, and the lume is blazing bright. They even went as far as luming the little date indicator in the Rota date complication, which is a really fun detail. And here is the automatic on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. This is going to be a crowd-pleasing size, and the inverted links definitely help with comfort during wear. You can see it rides a little high off the wrist due to that thick case back, but I think it looks great overall. And with the same case size, the chronograph is going to wear in similar fashion, but here it is on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, both of these watches represent a ton of value. The price of the automatic especially is surprising to me. It has all the desirable specs you would expect at about the $500 price point, with some you wouldn't, like the quick release system on the bracelet, and yet it sells for less than $300. I also really love this case shape because it reminds me of the Seiko Samurai, but at a much more wearable size for my size wrist. The case finishing is also excellent, and I love the Rota date. It's a quirky and fun way to display the date. Finally, on the chronograph, I really like that instead of a 24-hour subregister, we got the much more useful chronograph hours subregister. For cons, I would like the bezel on both watches to be a bit taller because sometimes it's tricky to get a grip on them. On the automatic, I'm not a fan of the combination of brushed hands and high polished indices. I feel like it's a little bit of a mismatch. And then my final con is that these aren't available right now. You're going to have to wait for version 3. Now, in the world of microband watches, there are a million choices. You tend to get better specs for the price than you would if you go with a major brand like Seiko. Now, these watches from MMI are very competitive even in the microbrand space, and also have a very unique design to boot. If you like the look of either of these watches, I don't think you can go wrong picking one up, so keep an eye out for version 3. So there you have it, 2 watches from MMI Watches. What do you guys think about these watches? Let me know in the comments below. As always, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.